Simple, what we're talking about tonight, and I think, you know, right up front I do want to be clear about that. What we're going to be talking about is that before we had a rule that said students can't use their devices when they're in school. Now, that's a pretty difficult thing to enforce when you have schools, some that are filled with kids with devices and they could be sitting there using them, and you try to police that as best you can. But what we're saying now is that if parents choose to, and again, this is if parents choose, they feel it's in the best interest of their son or daughter to use a device as a learning tool, and they think that it will enhance the learning, that option is there. It's a pilot with grades 2, 5, and 6. Probably looks different at each of those grade levels, obviously. The amount of technology use. It looks different probably in each classroom. I think one thing people often ask is, well, you know, what does this look like in the classroom? And it's a really good question, and hopefully we'll, you know, get to that part. And I think that it does look different in each classroom because every teacher is different. If a teacher is teaching something and a student has a device and they can be working in a group and they can access information, 5 kids that are researching something, and they're able to get out to the internet and a secure internet, then it's just a vehicle for the students to be able to get out to get information. We see kids using reference books less and less. It's just more natural for them to go to a digital device to look up information. That's what I do. I've been doing that kind of for years. I'll Google it. You know, that's kind of the term you hear a lot. It's just sort of the place where we go for information. Wikipedia is the most used resource for students, and that's, you know, I think middle, high school, college, and so these tools are being used. They have been used, and what we're saying is rather than us keeping the door closed to it, we're going to leave that choice open to parents. I want to start out with a video to kind of set the context, lay the foundation a little bit for you, and we will go through. I just have after this a few slides I'm going to go through to tell you a little bit about the program, the overview, and address any questions that you might have. And again, thank you guys for coming out.
Today's world is different for our children, vastly different from the one we grew up in. The technologies we take for granted or simply don't understand have become an integral part of our children's identities. These technologies saturate practically every aspect of their daily lives. This digital bombardment is shaping who they are and who they will become. We must realize they live in a different world and speak a different language. If we ever want to take part in nurturing those who will be the architects of our future, it's up to us to learn that language and step into that world, to allow them to lead us in as much as we must lead them, so that we may truly understand the digital generation.
So a question you might ask is, how do we know this stuff? Well, we know this because of something called the Human Brain Project and the International Consortium of Brain Mapping, which is a project that has been ongoing for more than 15 years at major universities around the world. And you see, during that period of time, a brand new field of brain studies emerged. It's called neuroinformatics. Now, neuroinformatics involves the analysis of brain processes by the means of neural scanning and imaging using the incredible number crunching power of computers together with our growing understanding of the biology and the chemistry of the brain. And you see, using really powerful brain scanners, they're called fMRIs, functional magnetic resonance imaging systems. We can now, for the very first time, get inside the black box known as the brain. We can actually now examine living brains non-invasively while they are in very specific processes of thought. And you see, using these technologies, researchers can view not only in real time, but also in 3 dimensions, what parts of the brain are being used to perform specific mental processes. I have to say, folks, this is absolutely amazing, because see, these technologies and these techniques are now allowing researchers to be able to pinpoint to within a few millimeters the parts of the brain that actually light up or turn on when we do things like view vivid colors, when we see pictures of yummy calorie-rich desserts that we're not supposed to be eating, when we stare at pictures of scary faces, even when we do something as simple as move a finger, feel sad, add 2 + 2, or do a specific mental task. And you see, literally decades of research have now shown that intensive, sustained, and progressively challenging stimulation and focus over extended periods of time, what we call digital bombardment, can profoundly affect neural pathways, changing the pattern of neuronal activities in response to experience. This actually changes both the brain's physical structure and the functional organization from top to bottom. In fact, Canadian psychiatrist Norman Doidge, author of The Brain That Changes Itself, has stated that neuroplasticity is one of the most extraordinary discoveries of the 20th century. Digital bombardment has a particularly strong influence on an area at the back of the brain known as the visual cortex, okay? So let's talk for a moment about the effect of digital bombardment on the visual cortex. Now, I'll go off on a bit of a tangent here by saying that the average video game takes about 40 hours to play and master. The complexity of the puzzles, the complexity of the objectives grows steadily over time as the game progresses. Now, a recent study by the University of Rochester has found that visual processing skills dramatically increase with as little as 10 hours of gameplay. Their initial conclusion is that game playing is reshaping the brain. It goes without saying that these developments hold enormous implications for educators. According to developmental molecular biologist John Medina, in his amazing, hilarious, and incredibly informative book called Brain Rules, tests have shown that people can remember the contents of more than 2,500 pictures with more than 90% accuracy several days after exposure, even though the subjects see each picture for only about 10 seconds. Recall rates a year later still hovered around 63%. But the same research says that if new information is presented orally with no image present, people only remember about 10% of what was presented, okay? What this means is that after just 72 hours, students are only going to remember about 10% of a lecture. If that's the case, a question we have to ask is our traditional stand and deliver full frontal lecture model, is it effective? And the answer to it is obviously not.
So the reason that it's important to kind of show that video to set the context is that there's a reason that we're doing this. This isn't just, about trying to keep up with the latest and, what's happening and the latest fad that's out there. Is that there's a reason we did things the way we did them in the 20th century. And there's a reason that it was important to have a room full of students and maybe have them sit in rows and teach them the same thing at the same time. Those were the types of jobs that they were being trained for. The reality is now, those of you in this room who have 5th graders, 6th graders, 2nd graders, we don't know what the type of jobs are that they're going to have. We might have some ideas, but most of those jobs we're hearing aren't even created yet. And the sets of skills that those jobs are going to require are going to be completely different than when we were in school. And so it's important that we revisit and ask the question, why then do we continue to do things the way that we do them? And I think when you start to ask those questions, the tough questions, you start to realize that, there is a different way to do it. And there might be a way that we can begin to sort of better train our students for the world that they're going to live in, for the jobs that they're going to have. And the reality is that digital devices are a part of that world that they live in. And there are some powerful applications for that in the classroom. Teachers can use these devices. I mean, there's all different things that we could talk about in the classroom and how they'd be used. But the reality is that these are part of the world that these kids live in. And they're learning regardless of what happens here in school for the 7 or 8 hours that they're here. They're learning outside of these walls as well. And so it's us saying we're going to be open to seeing what happens with this pilot program. So I want to go through just a couple slides about the program with you. And first, the name, Bring Your Own Device. Why bring your own device? A couple points here. 21st century instruction is necessary for 21st century learning. Schools must challenge students with rigorous, personalized academic experiences that foster innovation and creativity and embrace emerging technologies. There was an article out recently that surveyed students all around the world and asked students, what do you want more of in school? One of them was, more use of technology. The second one was more creativity and innovation, that our students actually wanted more creativity and innovation in school. And it's like, wow, that's pretty powerful. You talk to CEOs of businesses and you ask, what's the one thing that you're looking for in a worker? And you hear a lot, it's creativity and innovation. I think that's going to be something really important for our students. Many students have personally owned devices in their pockets that can be used to allow them to learn in their own style and at their own pace. So what's the D all about? For the purposes of BYOD, device means a privately owned wireless or portable electronic piece of equipment that includes laptops, netbooks, tablets, slates, iPod touches, cell phones, and smartphones. So you might be wondering a little bit about the pilot program and the rollout. We broke this down to have 3 steps. Step 1 would be beginning October 17th, and it would run for the remainder of the school year. Grades 2, 5, and 6 would be included in the first test group, and it would be designed to work through issues in a controlled environment. A parent forum will take place at each school in mid-September. One of the things that's really important to us during a pilot, and the reason we're doing it in a pilot, is that if there are issues, they can be worked through in a smaller setting than opening something like this up to an entire school district. The whole time we're going to be researching, working with teachers to find out how are things working, what's not working, what can we change. There's going to be a lot of time put into that and a lot of energy. It's not something where we say kids are open to bring their devices and we walk away from it. It's going to be finding out, is this working? Is this worth doing? Is it worth continuing into other grades? Maybe it didn't work. I think it's so being open to giving it a try, and that's why we would be doing it as a pilot. Step 2 would be reviewing the Bring Your Own Device pilot throughout the 2011-2012 school year. This will help parents understand what is working and what challenges might be necessary to improve the experience for all parties. Pilot program teachers, students and parents will be asked to complete surveys for future planning. Feedback is going to be huge during this, and it's going to be asking parents, asking teachers, and also working with administration, and also myself as we're dealing with some things on the network end. Full implementation, all K-8 grade levels will participate in BYOD for the 2012-13 school year. Again, this would be after finding out what's working, what's not working. And again, this isn't a timeline that's set in stone, but this is something that we would be able to go, and evaluate as we go through. So there are school board policies, there are bring your own device user policies and parent-student agreements. We have a sample of the device or user agreement, and you're welcome to grab a copy. They're on the back table. They're also on the report that's online. Should you choose to participate in the pilot, and again, I want to emphasize that this is optional. This is not something that we're saying parents in these grades have to participate in. This is optional. And if it's something that you would choose to participate in, parents and students would need to sign the user agreement. We would keep that on file. So that's an important part of it. And frequently asked questions. We tried